Hi everyone, welcome to Lesson 2, Understanding Vulnerability as part of the Extreme Medicine Certificate at Northeastern University. This lesson will focus on understanding vulnerable populations. One of the biggest obstacles to provide effective health care in humanitarian settings is that different crises occur in diverse populations and disparate locations. So this lesson in week 2 will focus on high-risk, high vulnerability populations, those populations with the greatest probability of being exposed to disasters. How do we have the capacity to maybe anticipate, cope with, resist, or recover from the event? And we need to include within these communities the poor, racial and ethnic minorities, immigrants and non-native speakers, women, children, elderly persons with disabilities, and persons with medical issues. But I'm going to make one point really clear. When I was deployed in 2004 to Banda Aceh in Indonesia after the earthquake and subsequent tsunami, many of the wealthiest people, even the middle class, really found it very challenging to survive, live, thrive in a refugee camp situation. So let's talk about that as well. We're also going to look at using a systems approach, how it's possible to think beyond traditional medical models and influence the social, economic and policy structures that induce vulnerability. Planning and preparedness are key drivers to successful response and recovery outcomes, and such actions do not necessarily require significant effort or expense and can be integrated with routine activities. And also I want you to be aware of the awareness of possibilities for action, that is to enhance when individuals understand and personalize the risks they face in their community. So by the end of this lesson 2 for this week, I want you to be able to define and apply the concept of high risk, high vulnerability populations to disaster contexts, identify the social populations most at risk when disasters strike, understand how stakeholder involvement is essential throughout all the phases of disaster to identify and validate gaps, solutions, and unresolved issues regarding vulnerability. Identify varying systemic levels where medical intervention can reduce disaster vulnerability. I want you all to understand and sort of interpret that, that some populations are more vulnerable and at higher risk from disasters than other populations. I want you to start thinking about what you would do when you are deployed to a disaster in a geographical area that you've never visited, helping people who may not speak the same language, have different customs and cultures, how you would identify high risk, high vulnerability populations, and understand their potentially unique needs in a disaster context. Because by employing a systems approach across the life cycle of a disaster, you'll need to learn and explore potential strategies to reduce vulnerability, provide necessary assistance or accommodation, and to build the capacity of individuals, families, caregivers, agencies, organizations, and the community. It really takes a team response. Now, for lesson 2 this week, there are 3 activities to do. The first one is a discussion topic. So as I've mentioned in topic 2.3, the American Red Cross has a process that maps vulnerability and identifies where the needs are. So by overlaying census data, the Red Cross and its partners can invest time, resources in communities and identify where the need is greatest. I want your opinion. Do you find this process and these maps produced by the American Red Cross, are they helpful in identifying vulnerable populations and individuals? Why or why not? You also have a team assignment this week. In this activity, you'll research cases, current events, and supporting materials that are relevant to the subject matter of this lesson, that is understanding vulnerability. And you have an individual assignment where I want you to look at the term vulnerable or vulnerability, and that it refers to people with a higher probability of being exposed to disaster. And who also face challenges in anticipating, coping with, resisting, or recovering from disasters. Vulnerability is a complex phenomenon that is influenced by many social, economic, cultural, and other characteristics. So for this week's individual assignment, I want you to prepare a PowerPoint presentation that includes your definition, your own personal definition of vulnerable or vulnerability. That is, if someone asked you for a definition, what would you say? And just on that topic, note that not everyone's a good listener, and so try to keep it short and succinct. Now, in your presentation, outline a case study of a methodology used to assess vulnerability before or even after a disaster. There are many models and tools available to assess vulnerable populations. So in week 2, we covered some of them. There are many others. Again, please feel free to contact me by email, text message, WhatsApp, phone call, or whatever works for you. My direct phone number is 202-468-7553, and I hope you have a wonderful week. And please feel free to contact me if I can help you in any way.